Today I'm going to be doing an alternator swap change. The alternator I have on my car currently works fine, but I'm switching back to my factory alternator because my underdrive pulley works on the factory alternator, whereas I had an issue with it not fitting correctly on the AutoZone alternator that I bought when mine died. I needed one to hold me over until I could get mine rebuilt. So today I'm going to be swapping my alternator back on. Nice BBK pulley, underdrive pulley. It's a little dirty because it was already in service on the car beforehand, like I said. And now I want it back. Okay, so first things first, doing any kind of engine work, electrical work, pretty much anything under the hood, just to be safe. I want to unhook your battery, which in my case is an 8mm socket. Just back it out. Move it off. Something I do to keep it from accidentally reconnecting. Just stick the end of it in an old glove, tuck it out of the way. There's a small notch cut out right here, right in the front of the tensioner, that fits a 3/8 drive ratchet. Now if you have a longer ratchet, this works even nicer. Mine's kind of short, does the job. So push it over towards the water pump, take the belt, slide it off, let the tension back. Now, you will run into this, where, at least in my case, one of the longer studs that you have that's used for mounting partial of the air conditioning system will hit your ratchet. And if you have like a swivel-headed ratchet, you can swing it out of the way and let go of it. In my case, I have enough 3/8 ratchets. I don't really need to worry about it, so I'll just leave it sit. Next step is you need to be able to access the 4 bolts on the top of the alternator bracket itself. One bolt is actually covered by the inlet to your idle air control valve. I've had mine off a few times. I decided to switch out the hose clamp for one of the wing nut style ones, so this makes this job nice and easy. You may have to get out a pair of pliers in some cases and squeeze the hose clamp to get it off, but basically you need this out of your way. Undo it, take it off. Now with it up and free, you don't really need to remove it. Just need to be able to move it around enough to get back here. 8mm bolt. I like to use an extension on mine. Long extension is easy to just grab a hold of, gets the ratchet up and out of the way so you don't hit it on anything. It can be done with shorter ones. It's just whatever you prefer. After the removal of all 4 bolts, the bracket will just come off. You have a few vacuum hoses and things in the way, but basically just get it slid out of here. Apologize for the wobbly camera. My camera stand is actually sitting partially on top of the vacuum hoses. Now if you're wondering why I took the bracket off before unhooking the alternator itself, it's because with the bracket on, this clip to the alternator, or coupler, whatever you want to call it, is really hard to actually get out because of the small locking tab. You usually have to use a small flathead of some kind. However, the bracket is usually in your way. So, pull back the little rubber protector, slide it out of the way. 10mm nut off. Spins out of the way. Pull the power cable off. Put the nut back on. Putting that back on saves you the trouble of ever losing it. You reach in here, push in on the locking tab. You can wedge the screwdriver down in on the tab itself, if you can see that. It pushes it in, comes right out. Now you need your 2 bottom alternator bolts. Now, handy part about these is the alternator itself it's not a hole, it's actually a slot cut out, and these are held in by tension. Now the bad part is your water pump pulley is actually right in front of one of the bolts. So if you plan on trying to use a ratchet on this, save yourself the time. Get a closed end wrench for this one. You can use a ratchet for this one. These are 10mm bolts. You don't actually need to get these completely out. You just have to back them off enough to let go of the tension of the alternator itself, and they will slide. The alternator itself will slide straight up and off of both of the bolts. You don't actually have to take the water pump pulley off or get it out of the way, anything like that, because you don't actually need it back that far. Once you loosen it up enough, you just grab the alternator, slides right out. The 2 slots that I was talking about. Makes this thing really easy to get in and out. Your installation is quite literally the reverse of taking it out. Put it back on the two bolts at the bottom. Get both of these snug back up. Move back up to your wiring. Get it hooked back up. Put your bracket back on. Tighten everything back down. Put your belt back on. Good to go.